Thank you for coming today. I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and with me are 4 teachers, and they wish not to have their names identified, so we're going to honor that request. However, 2 of them, the one to my right and the teacher to my left, they will be making statements after my statement, and then they'll decide if they would like to answer any questions or not. On January 14th, 2020, a Delta Airlines pilot, flying at a relatively low altitude and through clear skies, dumped massive amounts of toxic jet fuel onto teachers, the school where they worked, onto the children who were in their care, and onto the neighborhood below the jet airplane that he controlled. We represent 4 of those teachers in a lawsuit that we filed today in Los Angeles County Superior Court. In the morning of January 14th, a massive Boeing 777-200 flown by Delta Airlines as Flight 89 took off from Los Angeles International Airport bound for Shanghai, China. Shortly after the takeoff, the pilot declared an in-flight emergency and caused the aircraft to fly over the heavily populated neighborhood that included Park Avenue Elementary School. Our lawsuit alleges that the Delta pilot notified air traffic control personnel of the need for the aircraft to return to Los Angeles International Airport, but the pilot did not inform air traffic personnel of any need to dump fuel in order to lighten the plane for landing. In fact, the Delta pilot was specifically asked by air traffic personnel if there was a need to dump fuel, and the pilot replied by saying, quote, "Negative," end quote. He said, quote, "We've got it under control," end quote. Had the Delta pilot notified air traffic personnel of the need to dump fuel, the flight would have been directed by air traffic control to a location and to an altitude from which fuel could be released without danger to the teachers, the students, and others at the school. Without notifying air traffic personnel, however, and without regard for the health and the welfare of the populated areas below, and without regard for the fact that the aircraft was only around 2,000 feet above the ground, which was insufficient altitude to allow fuel to evaporate or dissipate, and without any effort to fly at a higher altitude, and without lightening the plane by flying in an approved holding pattern to burn off fuel at a safe altitude, and without any true necessity, the Delta pilot of Flight 89 caused the plane to release what are believed to be thousands of pounds of fuel per second over the city of Cudahy, California, and areas under its flight path. At the time, Flight 89 was flying so low that the fuel it was releasing did not have time to evaporate or to dissipate before hitting the ground below. Unaware of the dangers posed by the Delta plane above them, and while instructing children on the playground, the plaintiffs in our lawsuit, who were teachers at the school, were coated with jet fuel dumped from Flight 89. The plaintiffs could feel the fuel on their clothes, their flesh, their eyes, and their skin. Fuel penetrated their mouths and noses as well, producing a lasting and severe irritation, and a lasting and a noxious taste and smell. The coating of fuel caused them to feel sick and dizzy and nauseated. It caused the plaintiffs to experience breathing difficulties and severe discomfort, which required medical treatment. They also suffered severe emotional distress from the knowledge that they had involuntarily ingested toxins. Their severe emotional distress includes the reasonable fear that the exposure to and ingestion of jet fuel might produce serious health consequences in the future. For these reasons, we have filed a lawsuit this morning against Delta Airlines, Inc. We allege negligence, and we're seeking general and compensatory damages in an amount according to proof at trial. We are very proud to represent these 4 teachers at Park Avenue Elementary School, whose first priority was the safety of their students in this emergency. They immediately rushed their students indoors, and they did their best to decontaminate the children who were screaming and crying, even though the teachers were also contaminated and in pain from the toxic fumes and the fuel. They assisted the children first, and they put their own safety last. Decades ago, prior to my becoming an attorney, I was a teacher in the Los Angeles Unified School District. We are honored to represent teachers who were true heroes in this unexpected crisis. We look forward to Delta Airlines providing justice for these teachers and for others who were harmed and were victims of this unnecessary and dangerous toxic fuel dump. And before I introduce the other teachers, this is a copy of the lawsuit that we filed this morning. So, and we expect to be adding others to the lawsuit. Okay, so let's have you take my seat. Okay, why don't you sit here? This is a teacher who has been a teacher for 21 years at Park Avenue Elementary School.
I have been a teacher at Park Avenue Elementary School for the past 21 years. On Tuesday morning, as usual, I began taking my first graders outside to have lunch. I began feeling a light drizzle on my hair, my face, my body. I thought it was rain. And then I caught the scent of fuel. I started yelling for my students to come back inside the building. I didn't know where the smell was coming from. I thought, oh my God, it must be a terrorist attack. All I could do was think of making sure my students were safe and calm, and to calm them because they were screaming and crying. Soon after, my head began to hurt, and I started feeling nauseous. I couldn't smell anything other than gas. I couldn't taste anything other than gas. The firefighters gave me oxygen. When I got home, I scrubbed down and I washed my clothes. The next day, I woke up with a severe headache and nauseous. By noon, I went to urgent care because the pain wouldn't go away. I'm scared of what can happen to my health, the health of my students, my friends, and my colleagues. Thank you.
I've been a teacher at Park Elementary School for the past 13 years. On the morning of January 14th, close to noon, I observed a Delta Airlines jetliner approaching from the east at an alarmingly low altitude, exuding 2 long plumes of white matter from the back of the plane. The white plumes remained in the sky as the plane flew directly overhead, while I was on the playground of Park Elementary with my 5th grade class during PE instruction. Several seconds after the plane had passed us, I began to feel drops of jet fuel raining from the sky. My students initially thought it was rain and began looking up, only to have the noxious liquid then overwhelm our eyes, mouths, nose, lungs, and skin. I immediately began to rush my students indoors as the fumes were stifling. My students began screaming and crying because their eyes and skin were burning. Fear, dread, panic, and helplessness ensued. We are all very experienced teachers, but we are not equipped to deal with this level of hazardous contamination. We had to ensure the decontamination and care of our students as best we could until help arrived. In ensuring the immediate care of our students, we were not able to decontaminate ourselves for several hours after the jet fuel had saturated us. The subsequent aftermath of eye, sinus, respiratory, and other health issues have plagued me and the other teachers who are here with me today, as well as the fear of the long-term effects this level of exposure may cause us.
Okay, I will take some questions, and they have not decided to take questions, but if they decide to take them, they can feel free. Okay. Yes.
Why not seek medical help the day of? A lot of the firefighters were saying that no one was transported, no one elected to go to the hospital that day when it was offered.
Okay. Do you want to say? Okay, here, let's move over. Wait, let's move. We'll just move down.
I can only speak for myself. I was in a panic. The firefighters told me that they could take me to the ER, but there was really nothing that they had that could help me other than to give me something for my nausea. Like I said, they did give me oxygen, but just the thought of being transported in the
Ambulance.
in the van, I just wanted to go home. I just wanted to wash off. I wanted to take off that clothes, and I wanted to shower. And I didn't think about going to the ER.
Gloria, do you know the long-term effects or even short-term effects of this? A one-time thing? We know that there
We don't think it's a one-time thing, and some of them, but I don't want to identify which, have returned to either emergency room or urgent care for further care.
How many?
Did you want to add anything?
Can I say something?
No. Okay. Would you like to add anything?
Yes.
Okay, please do. Here.
Just stand up.
How many? No, we want you next to the microphone. How many years were you there?
I've been there. I've been at Park 11 years.
Okay, good.
And my children go there.
Your children also attend Park Avenue Elementary School.
I'm an intervention coordinator, so I don't have a class. When this happened, the first thing I did was to run to the kindergarten area because the kids were playing, and I know my son was there. Once I knew they were all safe inside, I went to the office to ask, what do I do? What do I need assistance with? My daughter is in 3rd grade. She's 8 years old. We started taking lunches up to the kids because the kids were hungry. It was during the lunchtime, and we weren't letting them go downstairs. The firefighters looked at me. They looked at my eyes because they were really irritated. They did give me saline. They asked me, do you want to go to the hospital? I said, no. I want to make sure first my kids are okay. And I couldn't take my kids out of the classroom. So I had to wait till the day was over, see how my kids were doing. As soon as I picked up my kids, we went home. I dropped off my kids with my husband, and I drove myself to the ER. I was in the ER for like 4 hours. And then again yesterday, I was at the ER for 7 hours. And the doctor gave me a note, excuse me for the rest of the week. So I didn't go right then and there, but I went that same day as soon as I got home. I just had to make sure that my kids were okay.
Okay, any other
So,
questions?
Have you spoken to anyone with the airlines?
No.
I'm sorry?
No, I have not.
Okay.
How many children were on the playground at the time of the incident?
Do you know?
Approximately 30 students.
Approximately 30 students, she said.
Well,
Do you want to move closer to the microphone?
On
Wait.
my end of the playground.
Wait, one
and
second.
on
Wait,
the main
just right
playground,
here.
on the kindergarten playground, I'm not sure. I didn't have a direct view of that area.
And once you realized it was fuel, how did you start dealing with them? Did you tell the kids not to rub their eyes, or were they rubbing their eyes, or can you give a little more elaboration?
First, we
on
had
it?
to rush out of the entire environment. I asked them to quickly, without trying to add,
Excuse me,
attempting not
Let's get you closer here.
to not. I wanted them to not panic any more than necessary, so I just rushed them indoors as quickly as possible.
How did they react once they were indoors?
Complete panic. They were screaming and crying. They felt the physical effects immediately.
Were they asking what was happening, like what happened, or
Yes.
Did you like what? I mean, not knowing, what did you say?
I don't wish to comment this time about what I told them.
You were able to observe the plane overhead, though, and the fumes. Is that right?
I personally didn't.
But were you able to?
I did.
She did. Okay.
When the teachers heard the tape of the pilot basically saying, "Listen, I have it in control. I know what's going on." I mean, can you tell me what you thought? Because the story had been that there was an emergency and that he was just doing this out of necessity.
I thought, honestly, when the plane was overhead, this is a flight path, and we see planes fly overhead every day. It was at an alarmingly low altitude, and I'd never seen a plane spewing plumes of white matter like that. I thought the plane might crash. It was that low.
Our concern also is that had the pilot informed air traffic control that they needed to and were about to dump the fuel, that air traffic control could have directed them to the safe altitude and to the safe area where they could do that. But because air traffic was not notified, to the best of our knowledge, prior to the actual release of the fuel into the heavily populated area, they could not perform that function of directing the flight to an area where they could, and to an altitude where they could safely dump the fuel to lessen the load. Yes?
Can you describe how it was coming down? Did you feel wet immediately? Can you describe it as a vapor or a mist? Do you agree with that?
It was like drizzle. Like when it's drizzling, you
Of course.
definitely feel the moisture. We felt the moisture of the fuel.
Was it like raindrops
Yes.
or mist?
Exactly, like raindrops.
How long did it take to catch on before you realized it wasn't?
Several seconds. The fumes were overwhelming, and they hit us almost immediately after we felt the drops.
Did it seem like enough of a concentration it could have been a fire risk?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How long did this mist, this rain come down?
It's hard to say. With the panic that ensued immediately after we realized what it was, we were just worried about getting the kids indoors as quickly as possible.
The clothing that you were wearing, does it still smell like jet fuel?
Yes, it does.
The school was reopened the very next day. They said they
Could you speak up, please?
The school was reopened the very next day. They say they had cleaned it, whatnot. What's it like, obviously, going back there, not only for you, but also your students? Are they fearful of going back out to the playground?
Of course they are. The students have been affected emotionally.
Can I say something?
Sure. Just excuse me, just a second. We have someone else who'd like to add something. All right.
Since I previously mentioned that my own children go there to park, I did not take them to school the next day. They were wondering why, because my son's only 5, and he did ask, "Mom, what was that ugly smell?" And I said, "Did you get anything on yourself?" He's like, "No, I'm fine." He said, "But it was really strong smell." And he's only 5. Driving this morning when I took him to school, he was looking out and he's like, "Wow, there's a plane, Mom. Is he going to do it again?" I'm like, "No, don't worry about it. You're fine." But I did not take him the following day. I kept him at home.
And how many years have you been a teacher there?
11 years.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you thought, I think it was you, that you thought it might be a terrorist attack. I mean, teachers, when they go to school, you have a lot these days that I'm sure you're worried about. Can you tell me about that initial feeling and what went through your head?
Okay, just like that. Okay, all right.
Like I mentioned before, I didn't see the plane. This was our lunchtime, and my regular routine is to walk out my kids to get their lunch. So I opened the door, I'm standing there, and I started feeling the mist coming down. And I was in disbelief because I did hear that there was going to be rain, but not till Thursday. And I'm standing there, face up, hands out. Is it raining? And I'm asking people that I'm seeing around, is it raining? But as soon as I got that smell, I started screaming, it's gas, it's gas. And I knew, or at least from my understanding, there's nothing around us. But it was in the back of my head with all the news going around, you know, that possible retaliation, something. It was there in my head already. So that was my first initial thought. And I was really scared. I was scared that I didn't think this is isolated. It's only happening at my school. I thought this is happening everywhere. And what do I do? So my kids were scared. My kids were screaming, and they were like, teacher, you know, like, are we okay? And I'm trying to calm them down. And at the same time, I'm like feeling dizzy, and it was very, very traumatic. I did go back the next day, like I said. I had about 4 kids absent. I don't know if that was the case, why they were absent, but the kids that were there, I had a few right away that came in, hugging me, telling me, you know, are we going to be okay? I had a few crying. And my job is to be strong for them and to tell them that they're going to be okay and that they're safe at school. So.
Did you see something in Spanish about what happened? ¿Qué fue lo que sentiste cuando estaba pasando eso?
Cuando sentí la lluvia, sentí que pues era lluvia. Cuando olí la gasolina, pensé que era un ataque terrorista. Ha estado mucho en las noticias, ¿verdad? Que posiblemente podía pasar algo así. Y eso fue lo que yo pensé. Yo pensé que algo estaba pasando en el mundo contra nosotros.
Descríbeme lo que sentiste, por dónde te pasó.
Muchas cosas. Piensas en tu familia que no está junto a ti. Piensas en tus estudiantes. Piensas en ti mismo. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Son muchos sentimientos.
Do you want to tell them in English what you just said?
He's asked. I guess he asked me what was going through my mind, what was I thinking, and honestly, there was just so many emotions because on one side you have family somewhere else, and you have students here, and it's just a lot to think about in a few seconds.
Excellent, thank you. We'll take one more question.
Ms. Allred, may I ask, how many additional teachers might be included in this lawsuit, and would you have to file separately on their behalf?
Well, we most likely would just amend this lawsuit. So we'll wait and see. We're still interviewing people.
Any idea how many additional teachers?
I can't say at this time, but we're still interviewing those who contact us, teachers, parents of students, and so forth. But we wanted to make sure that we did this immediately because we do want to let the public know that this is serious. You know, what appeared to be or reported to be minor is not minor because all of these brave teachers were harmed and we believe the children were harmed too and traumatized. So we have to send a message to Delta that you have to do justice for these teachers. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll let you know as there are further developments. Thank you.